Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is good to be together. Let's take a moment to unmute ourselves and hear one another say good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Good
Louis.
morning,
everyone.
Happy
Good morning,
Sunday.
everyone.
Good morning,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good morning from Greg
everyone.
Williams.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. There's important information there about upcoming events, so please do hang on to that page and look through it. I want to give a big thank you to the 75 or so households that have responded to the stewardship campaign already. Here is your UUCPA budget fact for the day. We have continued to pay all of our staff for their usual hours over the past year, whether or not COVID permits them to perform their job tasks. I am so proud to serve with a congregation of folks who live their values this way. Please help us keep doing that by making your pledge now. And now, let us begin our service. Today, in need of some light to find your way, we offer it to you. Freely, out. In you follow it, whether or not you have faith in yourself. And if you come here with a light heart and a strong sense of purpose, we ask you to give the light, show the light, be the light that someone else needs. In this way, we travel together, helping each other when the way becomes uncertain and the path too rough to follow. We are the light and the seekers, the wanderers and the way. Come, let us worship together. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from Ram Dass. We're all just walking each other home. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us become centered and fully present in this place and this time together. Like Linda Hennigan 2 weeks ago, Matt Rosin has a testimony to share about what is important to him about UUCPA.
Hi, I'm Matthew Rosin, and I grew up in a UU church in Houston, Texas. I was deeply involved at my church in middle and high school, but I drifted away from any kind of religious practice when I left for college and later graduate school. It wasn't until my wife and I got married and we started contemplating having children of our own that we found a home here at UUCPA. That was a decade ago, and now we're raising 2 children in the church. I've been involved at UUCPA in many ways, but I'd like to focus on one. Several years ago, I joined Melissa Thompson, one of our community ministers and a longtime UUCPA member, in founding our church's pastoral care choir, the By Your Side Singers. Since then, we've brought the UU singing tradition to church members who, for many different reasons, could not come to church or simply welcomed our accompaniment. And we've also accompanied each other in our joys and sorrows through song. Ours is an intimate style of singing. During non-pandemic times, at least, a living, breathing member of our community is with us, and we sing to them, or sometimes with them. Our goal is to bathe and embrace that person in song. And the needs of that person determine whether that embrace will be hushed and soothing or joyful and playful. A covenant of confidentiality binds me from sharing specific details about our visits and our spiritual fellowship. But I would like to say something about how being a part of the By Your Side Singers has transformed me. When we first started out, I could not look the recipient of my singing directly in the eye as I sang, whether during rehearsal or a visit. A raw feeling of vulnerability pulled my gaze downward or to the side. But through scattered glimpses, I began to notice the effect of our singing on others. Expressions on faces, tears welling in eyes, feet tapping, bodies swaying subtly. And I began to notice how freely some of the other singers could connect visually with the recipient of their singing, including when they sang to me during rehearsals. One face holds a special place in my memory. I was in awe, my heart awash in warmth, that another person could sing to me and look me in the eye, smiling with such kindness, and no agenda other than wishing me well. And I knew my unwillingness to step into that vulnerability and hold it for another person's benefit was keeping me from exploring a transformative aspect of our practice. So, I practiced. At first, I could not easily bring myself to hold the look of another while singing. But when I finally allowed myself to settle into that vulnerability, I was startled by what I discovered. I was no longer singing merely to someone from across a distance. Rather, I felt a physical connection, as if the air between us were a ribbon vibrating, dancing on the waves of song, binding us to each other in the moment. I was a participant in the creation of this mysterious resonance, and I felt awe at the power of ritual to unveil connections that too often remain hidden. This is but one of many ways that my involvement at UUCPA has taught me that I am, whatever my position on this or that theological proposition or belief, deeply religious in practice and more whole in the doing.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing the moving story of a piece of your spiritual journey. If you too have found that UUCPA helps you to know awe, gives you ways to participate in the creation of something beautiful and meaningful, accompanies you on the journey of your life, I hope you'll accept the stewardship team's invitation to a conversation circle. If you're not sure whether you received one and you'd like to join one of these conversations, please drop a line to pledge@uucpa.org. There's no hard sell, no pressure, just an hour to share a bit about your own journey and connect with other kindred spirits. And if you're ready to support the congregation in the coming year, please use the same email, pledge@uucpa.org, to state your financial pledge. Now let's join in as Bruce leads us in singing "We Are."
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Let's tell the Jataka tale of the timid rabbit. We'll have to change some of the animals in this story. Once Buddha's followers saw people who claimed to be more holy than everyone else. But the Buddha said, when you examine their religion, there is nothing more to it than the noise the rabbit heard. Then the Buddha told this story. Once upon a time, a rabbit was asleep under a Bengal quince tree, a tree that is sacred to the Hindu deities Shiva and Lakshmi. Suddenly, the rabbit woke up. What if the earth broke apart? What would happen to me? Ah! The earth is breaking up! Run! She jumped up and ran without looking to see what made the noise. Where are you running? The earth is breaking apart. Uh-oh, run!
Why are you two running?
The earth is breaking apart.
Oh no! Run!
Soon, many animals were running, though none of them knew why. Run away!
Run away!
At last, the lion heard them shouting that the world was breaking up.
Run away!
Run away! Run away.
I know the earth is not breaking up. I need to stop them before somebody gets hurt. Roar! Why are you all running? The earth is breaking up. Who saw it breaking up? Not me. Ask Packy.
Not me, ask Castor.
Castor, did you see the world breaking up?
Not me, ask Mickey. I heard the earth breaking up.
Come show me where, right on my back.
Right here.
That's just a Bengal quince fruit that fell. That's the sound you heard.
So the lion went back to the other animals and told them there was nothing to worry about. They were all relieved. The lion in this story is supposed to be the Buddha in a previous life. Today, the animals would use social media and turn it into a conspiracy theory.
Thank goodness the lion was willing to trust the evidence of his senses.
We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like me to speak this morning, please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or post them in the chat box provided by Zoom and they will be shared aloud. We honor and remember those who have lost their lives to COVID by lifting up one story each time we gather. Kevin Croak lived in Madison, Wisconsin, where he taught acting and worked as a waiter. Over a long career on film and on the stage, he had hundreds of roles, of which his favorites were thugs and mob bosses. But in real life, he was mild-mannered and gentle, a supportive teacher, and a mentor to many. When he died on November 28th, his best friend said, Kevin had a way of interacting with people that made them feel like they were the only person in the world. He was 64 years old. Blessed be. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing, "I'm on my way."
I'm on my way to the Canaan land. I'm on my way to the Canaan land. I'm on my way to the Canaan land. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. The road is long, but I'm on my way. The road is long, but I'm on my way. The road is long, but I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. If you won't go, don't you hinder me. If you won't go, don't you hinder me. If you won't go, don't you hinder me. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
Hello, I'm Barbara Schonborn, and I'm delighted to speak with you in honor of International Women's Day, which is tomorrow. In my life parade, I lift three banners: Unitarian Universalism, feminism, and lifelong learning. My first banner is Unitarian Universalism. My family joined this congregation when I was 12 years old. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, I am seen, heard, and loved. In the 1950s, men preached the sermons and served on the Board of Trustees. Women gave support in the Women's Alliance, for example. In the youth groups, even though I was female, somehow I was elected president and I learned to lead meetings and plan conferences. My second banner is feminism. Feminism is the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. Although largely originating in the West, feminism is manifested worldwide and is represented by various institutions committed to activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. My feminism grew strong as I experienced and saw sex discrimination, assault by coworkers, and bad effects of systemic patriarchy on people with different genders, backgrounds, and abilities. My Unitarian Universalist banner and my feminism banner fly together as I help make the world a better place. In the 1970s, the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly, or annual meeting, adopted several resolutions that addressed women's rights. The most profound resolution is the Women and Religion resolution, passed unanimously in 1977. This resolution asks all Unitarian Universalists to examine carefully their own religious beliefs and the extent to which these beliefs influence sex role stereotypes within their own families. All leaders and members of UU communities are asked to put aside traditional assumptions and language. To put traditional assumptions and language in perspective and to avoid sexist assumptions and language in the future. I participate in the volunteer grassroots groups that sprang up to implement this resolution. As a result of the work in the 44 years since 1977, we now have far more female and trans ministers, inclusive music, gender inclusive spoken and written language, females and trans people in lay leadership roles, courses and books for all ages, and ongoing efforts to become anti-sexist and anti-racist and to embrace people of all genders, sexual orientations, and abilities. I co-wrote one of the courses entitled Unraveling the Gender Knot, Challenging the System That Binds Us. This year, the annual Women and Religion Weekend Retreat in our Pacific Western District will be conducted virtually on one day, next Saturday. If you identify as female, you are welcome to these events. Unfortunately, registration is closed for this year's retreat, but to get a taste of what they're like and plan for the next one, visit our UUCPA.org website. Unitarian Universalist women have increased our influence. For more than 10 years, we've had the nonprofit organization International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women and Progressive People of Faith, or IWC. IWC has special consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. IWC creates partnerships with local and regional groups to teach women to lead projects in economics, education, health and reproductive rights, prevention of violence, and response to climate change. In the most recent international convocation near Monterey, California, I led a group of participants using the Global Sisters process to identify problems in education and propose solutions. My third banner is lifelong learning. During the COVID pandemic, I'm learning a lot from the worship services and classes our ministers and lay people are leading online. We'll continue gathering online and in person after the pandemic. I've learned that we can achieve equality for everyone if we work together and stay alert. Happy International Women's Day.
One Sunday last fall, I spoke about heroes and their complexity and frailty. Today's service begins from the additionally complexifying fact that there are at least two meanings of hero. One, the person who is an ideal, an exemplar, and the other, the person who is at the center of the story, the protagonist, in the sense that we are each the hero of our own story. And I want to recognize as well as I begin that the hero's journey I'm speaking about here, the one described by literature professor Joseph Campbell, is an archetype that isn't necessarily meant to be about the entire journey of life. It's a model for the journeys within this journey that we each take, journeys of new understanding, difficult tasks that we have to perform for ourselves in our development within the long journey of life. I should also say that Campbell's model is not very supported by scholars of the actual field of folklore, but it's had a great influence on our popular culture, and it's still persuasive. And it is still centered on a kind of journey, whether through life or through an ordeal, that is skewed toward the male. And more, it uses the models of masculinity that were prominent in the times and places, often ancient, to which he looks, and that were prominent in Campbell's own mind. He acknowledges that women can themselves be in the role of the hero, and in a few instances they are, but mostly women's roles in these journeys are to be the prize to be won, the temptation to be shunned, or the wise goddess. People of other genders don't appear at all. Men act alone. Oh, with mentors and companions, those are important parts of the archetype, but ultimately alone. We see that playing out in the charismatic CEO stories of Silicon Valley. We see it playing out in the loneliness of men such as the one who recently wrote into an advice columnist, "Sometimes I, a 30-year-old man, wish my close guy friends were a little more emotionally open. I always talk to my girlfriend about any problems or emotional issues I have, but it would be nice to connect on that level with my bros. Yet whenever we talk about life, we talk about it factually, without touching on its emotional aspects. How do I open up to them and get them to open up more to me without feeling like I'm forcing something?" We see it in the rose in the anthem we have just heard. Against whom, Rose, have you assumed these thorns? From whom does this exaggerated defense protect you? How many enemies have I lifted from you who didn't fear it at all? On the contrary, you wound the affections given you. The poet who wrote these words, Rainer Maria Rilke, gently offers another way with these questions. Perhaps men who have been taught that solitariness offers the only safety can be offered another myth that will be more freeing. The solitariness of the hero is one problem in Campbell's model. The myth of chosenness, of destiny, is another. Now, it may well be that some people are marked for a particular destiny, but is there anyone of whom that cannot be said? Issei Maria Barnwell offers a myth for everyone. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. What if we lived that way? As if we were all heralded by a star, instead of believing that destiny, capital D, destiny, is about being set apart from everyone else. We see the unique destiny myth play out in the agony of young people who absorb the idea that to be important, to be of value, they need to show all the marks of chosenness. They have to do something spectacular. start a company or a new nonprofit before they have to fill out their college applications. It's not enough to simply be a person of integrity following one's own path. That is too much pressure for any 16-year-old to bear, or anyone of any age. And a third problem in the hero's journey archetype is the lack of development in his companions' stories. They are a key part of the story, but their backstories, if they are given at all, are there to support the hero's journey. This leads to a deep, unexamined attitude that the role of other people in the journeys of our lives is instrumental. It's all about what they do for us, what they do with us. What they do when they're alone, well, they vanish. They aren't on a journey of their own, they're only on the hero's journey. We see that playing out in the powerful resistance to decentering whiteness in our country. The 1619 Project, for example, which tells the story of the United States from inside the lives of enslaved people, has threatened the heroic tale of the United States. In that heroic story, slavery and enslaved people are supposed to be secondary characters. If we actually tell their stories, as 1619 Project does, as if they too are on journeys that intersect with the stories of characters like the US founding fathers, then what will happen? Wouldn't it be great to find out? That the heroic myth fails men as well as people of other genders is illustrated by the beautiful story Matt told of his journey. His challenge was to connect more directly with the people for whom and with whom he sang. It required the courage that is modeled by the heroic male archetype, absolutely. It required a transformation of self that is also in that archetype. But his journey was mostly about connection, that vibrating ribbon between singer and recipient that shrank the distance between them. For someone on a journey such as Matt described, what guidance does the myth of the hero offer? Now, no story can do it all, and no doubt I am missing out on many of the subtleties of Campbell's model. But a mythic archetype that drew from more diverse experiences of being human would serve him, would serve all of us better. Blogger BJ Priester, writing on Fangirl Blog, urges us to look at what a heroine's journey might add that is missing from the hero's journey. For example, it might have a more human-centered inspiration where the old stories were often centered on a god, goddess, or multiple deities. Companions might not be mere sketches, mostly there to propel the central character's story forward, but would have richly developed character arcs of their own. And the author, BJ Priester, who is steeped in US popular culture, wants us to look forward, not only backward to the myths of the past. He thinks there's more potential there in today's movies, in comics, in books written in the last decade. There's more potential there to break away from damaging assumptions. As he writes, a storytelling model that only looks backward, as Campbell's model does, runs a great risk of losing touch with the norms and expectations of the contemporary audience. Even just in American popular culture, comparable examples are easy to identify. The Hollywood westerns of the 1960s and 70s, for instance, portray Native Americans in a way that rightfully would be roundly criticized for offensive stereotypes today. And hopefully no one would look to films like Gone with the Wind or The Song of the South for inspiration on how to write African-American characters. Various religious and ethnic groups have been similarly stereotyped in invidious ways, as have gays and lesbians, but looking only at historical sources rather than contemporary society is likely to perpetuate these injustices rather than help to end them. Historical and prehistorical sources do have more female empowerment than we have often been led to believe. Just the same, women have long known that if we follow the models of the past, we will always have a secondary and inferior role. We are trying to change the story, not just follow the old one. A myth formed from thousands of years, hundreds of cultures that are almost all patriarchal in nature is far too limited. It doesn't even include the point of view of half of humanity. So, on this day before International Women's Day, let's look at a story, still in the past, but in our recent past, for what we might add to the archetype of the life journey. I'm going to tell just a tiny bit of this story because the story of a life is complex. And it comes from our own culture, the United States of the 19th and 20th centuries, in order to provide a model for engaging here in US culture of the 21st century. But it's also international, evoking the people whose roots in Africa meant that they were never accepted as valid models for US American life, and showing that they should be. The story of a real person, Mary Church Terrell. She was born in 1863 to parents who themselves had been born into slavery. Both of them were of mixed race, and despite a lot of economic and educational privilege, Molly Church, as she was known in her early years, knew the brutality of racism. One of her closest friends was lynched, an experience that shaped her for the rest of her life, her long life. She was one of the first African-American women to earn a college degree. Her alma mater, Oberlin, has recently named its main library after her. She taught in the first public high school for African-American students. She was one of the founding members of the NAACP and the National Association of Colored Women, serving as the latter's first national president. She directed the campaigns of congressional candidates and was a leader in party politics throughout her life. And at the age of almost 90, she researched and planned and made herself a test case for desegregation of restaurants in Washington, D.C., laying the groundwork for the Brown versus Board of Education case that would follow a few years later. Her life spanned the Civil War, 1863, to the heart of the modern African-American civil rights movement, 1954. Terrell's journey can't really be fit into the hero's journey model, which is the point. The kinds of struggles she underwent, the journeys that she undertook, could be models for our own. For example, one of the recurring difficulties of her life as she worked in various agencies and campaigns and parties was gathering companions together and the difficulties of keeping together. When one is in party politics, when one is in a brand new New Deal agency that hasn't yet adjusted to the fact that Black people can be leaders, one is constantly having to negotiate the matter of how do we even journey together? This is what she did. She wasn't a lone heroine off on her own with maybe a helpmeet. Her job was to bring people together, to organize them, to get them to vote, to get them to act, and bring them all along on the journey. What do we have in the hero's journey that teaches us to do that? But we have a great deal in Terrell's story. Stories about infighting and envy and being a leader who nevertheless brings people along and also doesn't jump into other people's lanes. She had to face problems like which party one should even belong to as a Republican, as an African-American woman. Obviously a loyal Republican coming out of the Civil War, And then as the policies of Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, all Republicans, bring on the Great Depression, and a Democrat, a member of that hated party, the party of racism, the party of the Confederacy, creates the New Deal with all of its promise. These were huge questions for a generation of people, questions such as we face today. And what does the hero's journey monomyth tell us about these? Nothing much. But they are the kinds of obstacles facing anyone who is trying to heroically change the course of our country. We need stories like Terrell's. Because I think maybe one of the reasons that we don't do these things so well, this party building and organizing and systemic change, is that we don't have a guiding myth. Faced with complexity like building institutions, we try to struggle alone, like the heroes of the myths that we have. We gather secondary companions, and much of the battle is within ourselves. Sure, that all fits the myth. But what of challenges like the one that Terrell felt when she tried to join the American Association of University Women, AAUW, and was told that she couldn't? Not because she was Black, oh no, but because she was a communist. What made her a communist in their eyes? She was a supporter of peace and civil rights organizations, which were suspiciously critical of the status quo. Anti-communism itself is a result of thinking in the rigidly Campbell heroic mode, where the line between good and evil is fairly clear, and the hero's task is to carry the banner of the good side. In this case, the good side being the United States, specifically during Terrell's years, the Truman administration, and even more specifically, the House Un-American Activities Committee. Mary Church Terrell saw it as more complex. While she was not a communist and had deep criticisms of the Soviet Union, she insisted that the right thing to do required nuance. She supported the American Peace Crusade because she wanted to get, hear her words, our soldiers out of Korea. Colored soldiers are badly treated, given unjust sentences, she wrote. A trial with hostile surroundings lasting less than 1 hour, personal with me. Don't want my nephew Thomas to go as a soldier to Korea. White people might have been able to ignore the fact that Black soldiers were, quote, disproportionately subjected to capital sentences and court-martial hearings, unquote. She could not. And she questioned the goodness of those who did. She wrote, people here pretend they fear communism to keep folks from talking about the shameful manner the USA is violating the Constitution. What is the heroic journey when one is a loyal, loving citizen of a country that one wishes to save from its worst failures? Terrell's own story can be a better guide to us than the hero's journey. And furthermore, the struggle in which she engaged was more complex than that story suggests. As Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird says about his struggle to get justice for a Black man unjustly accused, this time we're fighting our friends. The fights over communism were internal, among friends. For Terrell, one of the proxy battles was with the head of the AAUW, the American Association of University Women. She broke the color barrier of that organization, an organization forever linked in my mind to Misao Sakamoto, a longtime UUCPA member who died a year ago this month, and who would not have been able to join this organization to which she was so devoted, if not for Terrell and other heroes who journeyed before her. That is the kind of struggle amongst friends that we need among our models if we are to know how to be victorious when those struggles come our way. As our society, far behind many others, gradually awakens to the existence of other genders, these stories too offer new paths for us. For people who are transgender, gender fluid, agender, and other understandings outside the gender binary, the journey of even finding their path is heroic and exemplary. How often do we need to seek outside the experience of anyone we know in order to find our mentors and models? The child who is the first in his family to graduate from high school, the young woman who is the only woman not only in her workplace but in her field, may proceed for a long time without mentors and have to bushwhack their own path. Just as Mary Church Terrell offers a model for complex, difficult internal struggles, there's such an amazing model that gender nonconforming folks could offer to these folks who are doing the bushwhacking. The journey where others have surely journeyed before, but we seek a long time before even finding their traces ahead of us. We all need as many models as we can get as we travel on our own journeys. With some journeys, we must, like the heroic archetype, go it largely alone, saying, if you won't go, don't you hinder me. And with others, as we will sing next, we must be guided through the hard night by love. If we are to create a different world, we must depart from the narrow paths set by the myths of men alone. And lo and behold, there are so many people who carry banners that we can follow to this new world.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Let the words of Barbara Paskin go with us as we extinguish our chalice. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Please stay after the benediction for our virtual coffee time. You'll be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or if you'd like to discuss the service, I invite you to stay here in the main room with me. You should be able to move between breakout rooms on your own as well. The rooms will stay open for half an hour. Now, will you please unmute yourself and turn on your video while we say our benediction together? I'll give you a moment to do that.
Our video is on?
It's on.
Go out into the world,
Be of good courage.
hold fast
To what is good. Turn no one for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Bring grace and beauty. Speak love of word and deed. Honor all.
Amen.
Amen. Blessed be.